about 2 hours ago, a Passionist priest who was the oldest member of our province was buried. Father Simon Wood, Passionist, a former professor of Greek and Latin at the Minor Seminary, later in his life a trusted spiritual guide through his hospital ministry and spiritual direction, died last week at the age of 96. He had resided in a nursing home near our community in West Hartford, Connecticut for some time. I used to visit Simon fairly regularly. We had a personal bond because he and I attended the same high school in Virginia run by the Benedictine monks, Benedictine High School. He went there in the 1930s. I went there in the 1970s. But we would share stories about Benedictine. About a year and a half ago, when Simon was more mentally alert and articulate, I noticed that someone had mounted his profession cross, a Passionist sign, and a holy card of St. Paul of the Cross on the wall opposite his bed in the nursing home. I commented to Simon about this. I said, "That looks nice." And he said, "Yes, I asked them to put those things on the wall where I could see them, especially my profession cross. You know, Robin, I'm probably going to die here in this bed, and I want that cross to be the last thing I see before I die." I trust that the cross was the last thing that Simon did gaze upon before he died last week. Simon's statement was a simple, heartfelt expression of his deep faith in the crucified and risen Christ. It was a back-to-basics statement that captured in a few words the heart of his and of our own Passionist vocation. This theme of simplicity, of what is most fundamental and significant about our lives, is manifestly evident in today's gospel. Luke's account of Jesus' commissioning of the 12. Jesus gives the 12 a share, a communion, in his mission of proclaiming the reign of God. He charges them not simply to preach about God's loving rule, but also to make that rule present in the lives of people. The presence of God's reign is experienced in a particular way when those who are in the grip of illness and oppression find freedom. There's an urgency about this mission that precludes any complications. They must leave behind whatever will weigh them down, whatever will prove to be an obstacle to this call to announce the good news of the kingdom. It is a mission far too important to allow anything to stand in the way of its fulfillment. The two martyrs whom the church remembers today seem to have embodied the message of this gospel text. Historical information about Cosmas and Damian is rather sparse, but it seems that they were two professional physicians and ardent Christians who lived in Syria in the 3rd century and suffered martyrdom near the beginning of the reign of Diocletian. Remembering them today brings us, in a sense, to remembering what's going on in Syria right now and the suffering of many there. Cosmas and Damian became famous for the free care that they offered the sick. They based their practice on Jesus' words to his disciples, "Freely you have received, so freely give." They became known as the unmercenary or moneyless physicians. The witness of their lives exerted a powerful influence in the early church, and a famous basilica was erected in Constantinople in their honor, became a place of pilgrimage. Cosmas and Damian exemplified the fulfillment of Jesus' command to proclaim the good news of the kingdom, especially through their compassionate care for the sick. They refused to let anything complicate or stand in the way of that mission. My brothers, having participated in the last general chapter and following the proceedings of this chapter on the internet, I realized that this message about a simple, wholehearted response to the call of Jesus may sound unrealistic, even unattainable. Each of us knows well that life is very complex. Religious life in a postmodern, increasingly secularized world is quite complex. Discerning the ways in which God is calling us Passionists today to carry out our mission in the church and the world is not easy or simple. And clearly, the concrete implementation of congregational restructuring is anything but simple. If matters were simple, general chapters would last 1 week instead of 4 weeks. Approaching discernment as individuals and as a religious community with gospel simplicity does not result in simplistic answers to complex issues. On this day of retreat, we have reflected on the call to foster communion and solidarity within our worldwide congregation. It's certainly not easy to know how to best to specify and to concretize communion and solidarity among provinces, while also respecting cultural differences, legitimate autonomy, and customary expressions of Passionist life and ministry. Such discernment demands careful attention to detail and keen awareness of the complexities of local situations. In the context of that discernment, though, I think that today's gospel challenges you and me to ask ourselves some probing questions. What are we taking with us that is unnecessarily complicating the fulfillment of our life and mission? What are the obstacles that are standing in the way of our proclaiming and making present the reign of God in the spirit of St. Paul the Cross? The walking sticks and the sacks that weigh us down may consist of many things, of cultural or ethnic prejudices, of old resentments, complacent lifestyles, irrational fears, unhealthy ambitions, and the list goes on. Particularly in the context of our congregational discernment, each of us might do well to ask ourselves, what is it that I need to leave behind in order that together we may proclaim the good news of the reign of God, the liberating message of the sovereignty of God's love? Jesus sent them to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. He said to them, "Take nothing for the journey, neither walking stick, nor sack, nor food, nor money, and let no one take a second tunic." The gospel simplicity to which Jesus invited his disciples was evident in the lives of the martyrs Cosmas and Damian, the unmercenary physicians who gave their lives to bring healing to others in the name of Christ. It was also reflected in the words of our confrere Simon. "Robin, I want that cross to be the last thing I see before I die." As we Passionists discern how God is calling us to fulfill our mission in today's world, may we keep before our eyes this gospel summons to proclaim the reign of God's life-giving love. May it uncomplicate our vision.